What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another Throwback Tuesday video. And in this video, we're going to be revisiting Critter format, and we're going to be revisiting a deck that I tried out and didn't really think was that good, but that a Discord user by the name of Disaster Area actually did some tinkering with and sent me a list that I think is a lot better. And that deck is Stall Mill. But before I dive in to why I think this build of Stall Mill is potentially better than the last one that I showed on the channel, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. We're at around 413 subscribers at the time of recording, and I'd really like to reach 500 by the end of the month. So if you subscribe, we'll be one step closer to making that happen. In addition, if you want to play any of the formats that I've been covering for yourself, then we have a Discord server now. Link will be in the description down below. It's an awesome place to find games in all of these obscure formats and also get feedback on your decks and just find cool people to play with. So I highly encourage you to check it out if it's something that interests you. And lastly, if you enjoy this video, as always, please leave a like down below. It really helps out the videos a lot, and it helps out the channel a lot as well. But now that that's all out of the way, let's dive in to what makes this Stall Mill deck tick. So previously in testing the Stall Mill deck, I sort of leaned more heavily into just recurring the card destructions with like Magicians of Faith, as I figured that was the biggest new strength that it got in the format. And its usage of something like Ultimate Offering, which was what made it so powerful in Yugi Kaiba, was greatly hampered by the existence of Heavy Storm. However, I think that I sort of went all in on making it sort of a combo deck. You know, I also played a Soul Control package, which I don't think really turned out that good. And so a Discord user, Disaster Area, actually streamlined the deck a lot and just sort of brought it back to basics. You know, we don't really need to be doing major combos as long as we just are able to stick defenders on the field. And, you know, we can potentially play Ultimate Offering because as long as it gets like one or two uses, that's still pretty good at defending our life points. And our opponent won't always have a heavy. So I think this list is pretty sick, and massive props to them. A link to their YouTube channel will be in the description down below if you want to check out more of what they do. So now that I've talked about the general concept behind this deck, let's dive into what makes it tick. So we've got, of course, the two recruiters, Witch and Sangan, which is honestly a lot less useful here. It can be used to fetch something like Thunder Dragon, which does help with deck thinning, and also, you know, helps with having discard fodder for Magic Jammer, and also can potentially draw you some more cards with card destruction. But in general, you know, you're oftentimes going to use Witch to fetch Sangan, and Sangan can search pretty much everything else in your deck that you'd want to see. We are playing 6 Defenders, 3 Wall of Illusion, and 3 Cocoon of Evolution. You know, I think the Wall of Illusion could maybe be cut here for like a 2k Defender, but Wall of Illusion does let you bounce a card back to your opponent's hand, which then will enable you to get a bigger card destruction play on them the next turn. So it's not terrible, it's just, I feel like it's too abusable in this format. If your opponent just loops something like Magician of Faith bouncing into Wall of Illusion back to hand, then, you know, I think that it's not that good. But, you know, it serves a purpose here, being a good defender, and that's all we can really ask for in this deck. And the other defender that we're playing is actually Cocoon of Evolution. Now, this is a bit of a funny pick, but it does have 0 attack, which means that if your opponent does use something like Change of Heart on it, then they won't be able to get in any damage with it. So that makes it a pretty funny card in this format, and a pretty good defender to use in this deck. You can use one of the other 2k defenders in place of this, like Giant Soldier of Stone or Aquamador if you want, but I think this is a fine inclusion in the deck. We also have 3 Magician of Faith, which can be great at cycling back some of your powerful spells, like Raigeki, Pot of Greed, Monster Reborn, Dark Hole, which are the power 5 spells that we're playing here. We've got Change of Heart in the side deck, it's just not as useful in this deck. It can cycle back something like Swords of Revealing Light, which can stall for a little bit longer, and it can also cycle back something like Card Destruction to go for an even bigger card destruction play and potentially mill out your opponent. The last of the monsters here is Man-Eater Bug, which can be great at acting as a form of removal to get rid of your opponent's monsters and just not really clear the way for your own monsters to attack in, although you can win by damage with this deck occasionally, but just to deprive your opponent of more resources. It can also be used to pop a, Sangan or a Witch to get 1 additional card in hand for a big card destruction play. Speaking of card destruction, I already went through all the spells, but I do want to emphasize that card destruction is basically the way that you're trying to win this game. So, you know, it can combo well with the Magicians of Faith, which can make it a bit more explosive than it is in something like Yugi Kaiba. So that's good to keep in mind, and try to set up that play when you're playing the deck. But I already went through all the other spells when I went over Magician of Faith, so let's dive into the traps, and we are playing quite a bit of them. We've got 3 Magic Jammer, 3 Solemn Judgment, as these are great counter traps at stopping things like your opponent Heavy Storm, or even something like an opponent's Solemn Judgment if you try going for your big mill play with the card destructions. So I think Solemn Judgment is very nice here. We also have a Mirror Force, which can be a great card if you're able to pull it off. 2 Trap Hole as it's more removal. 2 Ultimate Offering, as if you do manage to get this card set up and your opponent doesn't have a heavy, it can be very, very good at going defensive. And we have 3 Waboku here to act as sort of like the ultimate defensive card. For the side deck, we actually have a pretty funny post-sideboard plan of going into Exodia. You know, if we do manage to win through mill, our opponent is likely, potentially, to side out things like Card Destruction or Robin Goblin, and so Exodia could be more likely to win here. We also have 2 Prevent Rat if we want to go a bit more defensive, 1 Man-Eater Bug if we want more removal, 1 Cannon Soldier if we're playing against a stall deck of their own. You know, this can enable us to go for more damage. 2 Princess of Tsurugi for a similar reason. If they're on a bunch of back row, this can be very useful here. 1 Change of Heart if we do want to go a bit more aggressive, and also if we side in the Cannon Soldier, it's nice to pair with the Change of Heart. 2 Heavy Storm if our opponent is on a lot of back row, and 1 more Trap Hole if our opponent's on a bit more of an aggressive deck. Now, I don't agree with everything in this list. There are some things that I would change, especially after playing with the deck a little bit. But I think this is a very good starting point if you want to play Stall, Mill, and Critter for yourself. So let's dive into some games and show off how it plays. Okay, we've got a game against Aratos, a frequent guest on the channel and a great duelist in all of these old retro formats. So always exciting to have them on. And we're playing Stall, Mill, unclear what they're playing. We'll just have to dive into the games and see. So they're going to win the rock, paper, scissors here, and looks like they are going to go first indeed. And this is a pretty decent hand. We got the Thunder Dragon in the opener. We've got some defensive options here. They do get the Pot of Greed off first, so that's pretty good. They're just going to set 2 and pass. We draw a Magic Jammer, which is pretty great, as we will have discard fodder for it in the form of Thunder Dragon. So we're feeling pretty good about this. We're just going to set a Wall of Illusion, set the Waboku, pass back to them. If that is a set heavy, we don't want to have to waste the Magic Jammer on it just yet. And if it is a heavy, you know, we can just chain Waboku. They're going to set another pass back to us. And it looks like we're both taking it slow. We're going to set the Magic Jammer now that they have 2 back row. It's less likely that they have a Heavy Storm here. And we'll pass back to them. They're going to pass back to us. And we start to realize that they may be on a stall deck of their own, which is a little bit worrying considering that Exodia is a very strong deck in this format, and it can be a bit tough to deal with if you're stall mill. We're going to activate Swords of Revealing Light because we do have 7 cards in hand, and we might as well just play it to see what they're on. They're going to chain Waboku, and that's fine by us. The Mask of Darkness will flip up here, and so they will just get Waboku back. We're going to think about what to do here. We're going to flip up the Wall of Illusion, trying to bait out like a Trap Hole. And we're just going to attack in the Mask of Darkness. Won't do anything, but we'll pass back to them. Because we realize that we have to start going aggressive here. As, you know, they're very likely on Exodia if they're playing Mask of Darkness. And they're playing a more stally deck. They could be on Mask Negate, to be fair. But if they're on Mask Negate, that means that they probably don't have much aggressive pressure anyways. And the last will there kind of confirms that they are probably on Exodia. So we're going to let that go through, as I'm pretty sure they haven't activated any Thunder Dragons here. They have not. So any sort of like spell that they would use here to remove the Mask of Darkness, we can just Magic Jammer that instead. But unfortunately, they do discard a Thunder Dragon here and add 2 to hand. So, you know, they will be able to trigger the last will here, search out a Recruiter, and this makes it extremely likely that they're on Exodia. And it also does stem our aggressive pressure a bit, as if we want to go more aggressive here, we have to attack over that Sangan, which will add a piece to hand potentially. So I think at this point, the best thing we can do here is sort of just hope that we draw Card Destruction. And we can, you know, Magic Jammer anything that would clear the board, like Dark Hole, for instance. But this is a pretty tough spot to be in. It looks like they've got more back row than we do. We're going to set a Witch, pass back to them. And we just got to hope that we draw the Card Destruction. They're going to activate Dark Hole on this board. We do have the Magic Jammer for that. And they have a Solemn for that. So this will likely be the end of the game. But everything will go here. We'll get a search off the witch, but they will get to search 2 pieces with their recruiters there. And that likely will be the end of the game. And it is indeed. They've got a bunch of pieces in hand, and that will be it. So, you know, we weren't able to win that one, and honestly, this deck does have a pretty bad matchup against Exodia, which does sound kind of crazy as you are playing main deck card destruction, but that's your only way to really deal with Exodia, and you've got to hard draw it, where Exodia can sort of like just turbo out its recruiters and get its pieces to hand a lot more easily. So I do think that the deck has a pretty bad matchup against Exodia, which is pretty bad for the deck considering how popular Exodia is. But, you know, we're by no means dead in the water here. We can side more aggressively for Exodia, but we feel like they're probably going to side out of Exodia here. So we do just keep the deck largely the same. We actually did consider siding in Exodia of our own, but we figured that given what they saw of our deck, they probably think that we're on Exodia as well, and so they may be siding anti-Exodia hate for it. So we're actually going to just keep the deck pretty much the same as Stall Mill, hoping that they sided out of Exodia, or at least if they didn't side out of Exodia, maybe we can draw into card destruction now. We're going to send Thunder Dragon from our hand to graveyard to grab 2 more from deck before firing off this Pot of Greed here, drawing 2, and this is a pretty good hand. We're just going to set a Sangan, set a Magic Jammer. If they activate Heavy here, we're honestly fine with the Magic Jammer going, and Sangan's very good at getting another card to hand. They're going to set 2 of their own, pass back to us. We draw another Sangan, which is pretty great. We'll set the Sangan, set a Solemn, and pass back to them. They're going to activate Raigeki. We're going to let that go through as we can just get 2 more searches here. Unfortunately, Witch doesn't really search much in the deck at this point, but it's still a decent card. So they're going to attack in with a Witch of their own. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. And we draw a Waboku, which is pretty good. We're going to set the Witch and the Waboku, pass back to them. And let's see what they do here. They're going to switch the Witch to defense, pass back to us. Perfectly fine by us. We're going to set the other Witch, as we are at 7 cards in hand. If they do have some board clear for this, we can search out 2 flip monsters. So it's not the worst. But that's going to be it. We do draw card destruction, which is very nice here. If they are still on Exodia, we do have a way out of it. So that's very good, but we don't really want to do it yet, as if they're not on Exodia, we want to save it for a big mill play at the end of the game. So we're just going to play it very conservatively here. They're going to summon out a Muka Muka, attack in to our Witch. We will grab a Man-Eater Bug, which will be able to deal with that Muka Muka, although we do have Raigeki in hand to deal with it anyways, so we could just use that. We're going to flip up the Witch, that's fine by them. And then we're going to activate this Raigeki here. They will get a search on the Sangan there, and we'll be able to attack directly with the Witch. So they'll take 1100. We are going to set the Magician of Faith, hoping that they think that it's the Man-Eater Bug and try attacking into it with the Sangan, as we'll be able to get back a Raigeki here, which would be pretty good. We could also get back a Pot of Greed, which would also be very good, although we are like 6 cards below them in terms of deck size, so maybe we just want to get the Raigeki instead. They're going to activate Swords to see what we've got. If we did actually have a Man-Eater here, that would be really good, as it would just pop itself. But unfortunately for them, it is a Magician, so we are just going to grab a Raigeki here. They're going to bring out a Sangan and just attack over that Magician. That's fine by us. And they're just going to pass back to us. We draw Ultimate Offering, which is a good defensive card, but we've got 4 back row slots already taken up. So it's a bit iffy whether we want to actually commit it to board, because then our back row will be entirely clogged up, and we won't really be able to do anything about it. We're going to set this Man-Eater Bug and activate a Swords of our own, and then pass back to them. This brings us down to 6 cards in hand, and the Swords will expire in 3 turns. So, you know, that will let us sort of actually commit more to board. They're going to switch Sangan to defense. We are going to draw another Man-Eater. We're just going to set that Man-Eater. If they do have Dark Hole, we do have the Solemn and the Magic Jammers, and that'll clear up her back row a little bit. So we're not too concerned about committing more to board, and we just don't want to have to discard at the end of our turn. They're going to set another pass back to us. We draw another card destruction, which is really nice considering how many cards they have in hand, but it won't quite kill them yet. At the end of the turn, we can't really commit more to board. I mean, we could have brought out a Thunder Dragon, but honestly, I think I'm fine with this. And so we are just going to discard a Thunder Dragon for turn. They're going to set 1. Swords will expire, which means that we will be able to commit another card to board. We're going to flip up a Man-Eater Bug. They're going to search out a Sangan. And we're just going to try and get in here for 1550. Damage is a potential way we could win this game. We're going to set a trap hole because if they summon out Sangam, we're fine trap holing that, clearing up another back row. We've got Raigeki for later. We're perfectly fine with all this. They are going to bring out the Sangam. We're going to activate the trap hole. They will get a search here, but that's fine. We'll be able to get in another 15-50 next turn. They're going to Fissure away the Maneater bug and then set one. This gets them down to below 7 cards in hand. And we draw a Wall of Illusion. We're just going to summon that out. That will die to a trap hole, but we're honestly fine with that. We'll attack in for 1100 here, dropping them down to 4250. And it seems like we could reasonably win through damage. They're going to check what we've got in grave, set one, pass back to us. We draw a Cocoon of Evolution, which is a pretty decent defender, but we're going to flip up another Maneater bug, attack in for 1550 here, dropping them down to 2700, which is pretty good. And, we see one of the flaws of Cocoon of Evolution here in that if we actually did want to get even more aggressive and summon it out, this has got 0 attack, so it can't really do more damage. But we can just set it as another defender. We'll pass back to them, see what they do. They're going to bring out a Witch, that's fine by us, and they're going to attack into the Maneater. Now, this is actually a bit of an interesting decision. We could actually Waboku this, as we do have another Waboku in hand. And if we Waboku it, then like Raigeki, their Witch, then we will be able to get in for 1550, which puts them on a 2-turn clock. So we're going to think about this quite a bit, but we are just going to let the Maneater die there. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw another Ultimate Offering, which isn't really useful right now. And we're going to think about exactly what to do. We're going to switch the Witch to defense, hoping that they'll commit more to make the Raigeki play a bit better in the end here. And then we're going to discard another Thunder Dragon. I think, honestly, we could have discarded an Ultimate Offering here instead, but at least this way it gives them less hand knowledge. They're going to bring out a 7-colored fish here, and they're going to switch the Witch to defense, playing around Mirror Force. They're going to attack into our set. It is just a Wall of Illusion, so they'll drop, not a Wall of Illusion, a Cocoon of Evolution. So they'll drop down 200 more and pass back to us. We draw a Solemn, which is pretty nice. We're going to Raigeki the board away. They will get a search here off the Witch, but honestly that's fine as, they've got 6 cards in hand, 18 cards in deck. So we're feeling pretty good about this later setup for the mill turn. We're going to attack in for 1100 here with the Witch, just in case we do win through damage. We're going to set a Solemn, pass back to them. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We figure that's the Magician of Faith, so we're just going to attack into it here. Unfortunately for us, it's not the Magician of Faith, it's a Cannon Soldier instead. We're going to set a Magician of Faith, pass back to them. They're going to switch the Cannon Soldier to attack into our Witch. We're going to think about this, and we are actually going to Waboku this, as it does use up a Spawn Trap card zone. So it also protects our Witch, which is our main aggressive pressure here. But they're going to set one, pass back to us. And we could potentially just attack into that set with the Witch of the Black Forest, reading that it's a Magician of Faith, and then we could go for a big card destruction play here. Instead, we're going to Magician of Faith, trying to bait out something like a Solemn, and we're going to add back a Raigeki to hand. We're going to fire the Raigeki, and they will just let that go through. So we will just try and attack in for lethal here. They've got Waboku. We're going to chain a Solemn because, if we are able to get lethal here, that's pretty good. Unfortunately for us, they've got a Solemn of their own, so they will drop down to 700. We've got an additional Solemn, so we will fire that, but they've got an additional Solemn of their own. So they will actually survive here, but we are at 15-12, which, doesn't kill us if they have a Lodgin to attack in to the Magician of Faith. We've got 2 Magic Jammers in case they've got any other powerful spells, and we've also got a Waboku as well. Main 2, we're actually going to set the Waboku, set the Wall of Illusion, and we're going to get very aggressive here, setting a card destruction and going for another card destruction, discarding a ton of cards out of their hand. And I'm very glad we did that, as we hit some very, very powerful cards there. We hit a Reborn, Change of Heart, and Pot of Greed, all of which are very nice to get out of hand. And we draw a Magician of Faith and a Mirror Force, both of which are pretty great. We're going to think about what to do here exactly. And we're just going to pass here instead of going for another card destruction play, as we think that both of these cards are pretty good. But I actually do think this is a slight misplay. I think I actually should have set the Mirror Force, then activated card destruction. We still have 1 card in hand for a Magic Jammer, and we'd have 2 traps to protect ourselves in case they summoned out like a Muka Muka. As you know, while they don't have enough life points to fire off a 7 tools, they still do have 1 Solemn Judgment in deck or on field. And so this would have been a bit more insurance for that. But we didn't do it, and so hopefully it won't come back to bite us here. They do have Dark Hole. We will Magic Jammer that, and, we'll discard the Magician of Faith. They're going to bring out a Lodgin here, and they're just going to attack into our Magician of Faith. We've got Waboku for that, so that's fine. They're going to Swords, and then set one, pass back to us. We could have maybe Magic Jammered the Swords there, honestly, as we just want to get aggressive, but we don't really have a way to clear the Lodgin. So we're fine with that. We're just going to set a Mirror Force here, pass back to them, and they're going to attack into the Witch. That's fine by us. They're at 350, so we don't really need too much aggressive pressure here. We actually have no targets for Witch left in deck, which is very funny. I believe we just had 2 defenders left in deck. So nothing we could really do there. They're going to set one, pass back to us. And Monster Reborn just will wrap up the game if they don't have a Solemn here. We're going to fire Monster Reborn, targeting the Cannon Soldier, and that will just be the end of the game. So we didn't win through mill, but I think if we had gotten a bit more aggressive with the card destruction play at the end there, I think we easily could have. But luckily it did not end up mattering, as we did have the Monster Reborn for the Cannon Soldier, so that was very nice. But I think that game showed how good a job mill can do at just slowing the game down to a snail's pace, and then just getting aggressive with the mills in the end. And we did win through damage there, but as I said, I think we could have easily won through mill as well. And so the deck, I think, does have some legs if it's able to get itself situated and set up its game plan. We're going to go into game 3 mixing up the deck quite a bit. It probably would have been a lot better to keep it on the mill strategy, but I just had to go for the meme and side into Exodia. So let's see how that goes for us. We did side into Exodia. I forget exactly what we sided out. I think we sided out some Magic Jammers and potentially some Defenders. I don't quite remember. But it looks like they're still on an aggressive strategy, summoning out these 7-colored fish, setting 1. And we draw a piece already. That's feeling pretty good. We're going to Pot of Greed here, drawing 2. We've got a Defender, which is quite nice. So we're going to set that, set Trap Hole, pass back to them. We don't set the Solemn Judgment as well, as, we don't want to use it up on a heavy yet. And I think just a Trap Hole is fine. They're going to attack into the wall here, take 50. The 7-colored fish will bounce back to hand. They're going to bring out the 7-colored fish again. We could wall it, but it can't get over Wall of Illusion on its own. So we're fine with that. We're going to set a Man-Eater Bug here. Now we're going to set the Solemn, given that they have 2 back row. And we're going to pass back to them. They're going to attack into our new set. It is the Man-Eater Bug, so we will be able to pop that 7-colored fish. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw Cocoon of Evolution, which isn't that bad. We'll set that, pass back to them. And they're going to bring out a Lodgin. They're going to just attack into our set here. It is a Cocoon of Evolution. So it'll take 200, pass back to us. We draw a Witch of the Black Forest, which we're fine setting. We'll just do that, pass back to them. And they're going to attack into the Witch here. We will get to search for another Witch from deck. And, we could have searched for a piece there, but I think it's more valuable just deck thinning with the Witch here. We could always search for pieces later, and Witch actually does something on board here. So we're going to set the Witch, set a Solemn, pass back to them. They're going to attack into our set. It is just the Witch, so we'll add a Sangan to hand. And they're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw Raigeki, which is pretty nice. We're just going to fire that Raigeki in case they've got like a Magician of Faith, but it looks like they don't. They just had 2 beaters there. They will get to search out a Sangan for the Witch, and we're just going to bring out Sangan and switch everything to attack and attack in. We don't really want to overcommit to board because of fear of Dark Hole or something, and this is a way to bait out like a Mirror Force or something. Luckily, it doesn't look like they have the Mirror Force, so let's just hope that they don't have the Dark Hole here. They're just going to bring out a Sangan of their own, and it looks like they're just going to attack into the wall here. That will destroy both. They will get a search here, but honestly, I'm pretty fine with that. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw another Sangan, so we're just going to bring out that Sangan and try attacking in for 2,000 here. Again, just like in Game 2, we can potentially win through damage. Unfortunately, now they do have the Mirror Force. We could have Solemned that, but I don't really see a point to doing that, as we do get 2 searches here. So we're just going to search out 2 pieces now, as we feel like we're in a pretty comfortable spot to be able to do this. We've got a Swords to stall them for 3 turns. We've got Dark Hole to clear major offensive pressure, and we do have 2 Defenders on board. We're also at full life points, and we do have a Trap Hole as well. So we're perfectly fine with this state of affairs. They're going to bring out a Sangan, no use Trap Holing that. They do have a Fissure for the Cocoon here, so they will be able to attack in for 1,000. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw a Wall of Illusion, which is pretty nice. We're going to set that, pass back to them. And they're going to attack in for 1,000 here. They will take 850, Sandgame will bounce back to hand. They're going to set another, pass back to us. And we draw Thunder Dragon, which we're going to discard to add 2 more to hand. And given that we have a lot of cards in hand, we're going to actually just set these swords here and tribute set out a Thunder Dragon. This plays around Fisher a little bit, and we do have a trap hole in case they bring out a beater. Maybe we should have set the Dark Hole instead of the swords, as swords is a little bit more important to our strategy, and if they heavy this board, that'd be really bad for us. But given that they have 4 back row, we don't think that they're likely to heavy, so I feel safe doing this. But let's see what they do. They're going to activate a Pot of Greed here, drawing 2. And they're going to bring out a Lodge, and we're just going to trap hole that. They've got Reborn, so they will be able to bring back the Lodge in here, which is quite unfortunate. And they're going to flip up Sandgame. That's fine by us. And they're going to attack into our Thunder Dragon. They know they can get over it with the Lodgin, so that's fine. They're going to attack in for 1,000, set another, pass back to us. We could Dark Hole this board, but I'm honestly fine just setting Wall and setting Trap Hole, passing back to them. If they summon something out like a Muka Muka, then we can Trap Hole it, so we feel fine about that. They do have Raigeki here, and that's quite unfortunate. We'll just let that go through, as if we Solemn, we're basically taking more life points than they can deal on board right here. Unfortunately, they do have a heavy here, so we do have 2 Solemns, so, you know, we could potentially go for the Solemn plays here. But if they've got counter traps of their own, which they very likely do, given they've got 3 back row, we could get majorly punished here and potentially just lose the game outright. So we will just let that go through. And it looks like they did indeed have 2 counter traps, so I'm very glad we did this. Unfortunately, we did lose some very powerful cards, including that Swords, which would have been very, very useful to have here. They're going to set 3 more, pass back to us. Means that they don't really have many monsters left, so we are just going to go for a Dark Hole here. They will get a Search, and they're going to grab Cannon Soldier, which is a pretty good one. But we can set a Mirror Force here, pass back to them. We're in pretty dire straits, but we do have good draws that can get us out of this. We draw Swords, and this is a bit of a debate, figuring that they probably do have just a Magician of Faith here. So if we fire the Swords, then they can just get back like a heavy to clear the Swords. But if we don't fire the Swords, then they can just get back Reborn. I mean, they're in a pretty good situation no matter what we do. So we're actually just going to fire the Swords, and they will just get a Reborn anyways. That's very interesting and kind of worrying. They do just have a heavy of their own, so that will just be fine. And they're going to bring out a Cannon Soldier, activate the Reborn, and that is just the end of the game. Maybe we should have summoned out the Exodia to attack over the Magician of Faith, having the read that, we were likely dead in the water anyways, but they did have a trap hole in case we did summon out the Exodia head. So there's nothing much we could really do here. So we did lose the game, and it's unclear whether we had stayed on the stall mill strategy, we would have actually been able to win game 3. But I think this match actually does a really good job of showing off the strengths and weaknesses of the stall mill deck. Game 2, I think, really showed how powerful the deck can be when it's firing on all cylinders, and I think that if I had played the card destruction turn differently, it could have been even more powerful there and been a lot less fragile in the end. Game 1, I think, really showed off one of the deck's major weaknesses in that it is really bad against Exodia game 1. I mean, if you draw card destruction, then it's great against Exodia game 1. But if you don't draw the card destructions, then you just basically lose, as the deck can't go aggressive enough to kill your opponent before they get all the Exodia pieces. So I think the deck has a really bad game 1 matchup against one of the big meta decks in the format. And game 3 kind of showed that the Exodia side deck, in my opinion, is not very good. It can potentially achieve a win here and there, but I think overall you're much better suited to having better cards in the side than the Exodia pieces, although the Exodia pieces are extremely funny. So going forward in changing the deck, I might change like the Exodia pieces on the side and potentially swap out the Walls of Illusion for a different defender, and maybe even swap out Cocoon of Evolution for a different defender as well, as we did get aggressive game 2 and actually win through damage. So maybe it's worth having things like Giant Soldier of Stone to keep that aggressive pressure going even more. But what do you all think? Do you think that I'm sort of overhyping this deck and that my initial sort of evaluation of the strategy was correct, and that it's not really good? Or do you think that I'm finally giving its proper due and that this deck is definitely at least rogue, if not tier 2? Let me know down in the comments below. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.